My beloved child, wait, something about this story is not what it first appears to be. Your special person walked into that psychic's room carrying one quiet intention: they wanted to finally forget you. They thought that if someone could explain why your presence remained so strongly in their thoughts, perhaps they could close that chapter and move forward. But the moment the psychic heard your name, her expression changed. She didn't give the answer they expected. She became unusually quiet, as though one detail had completely shifted the direction of the conversation. Your special person leaned forward, waiting. Then came the first revelation: you didn't come here because you have forgotten this person. You came because every attempt to forget has made you understand them more. That sentence stopped everything. Don't skip, because what she revealed next was the part they were completely unprepared to hear. The psychic began asking questions your special person had never expected. Why did certain memories return at the strangest moments? Why did ordinary places suddenly remind them of conversations they thought they had moved beyond? Why, after convincing themselves that the connection meant nothing, did they still wonder what you were doing and whether you had changed? Your special person had no easy answer. And then the psychic said something that left them speechless. Perhaps the person you are trying to erase is connected to a lesson you still haven't understood. Suddenly, this wasn't about forgetting you anymore. It was about understanding why you had mattered in the first place. Stay till the end, because the biggest revelation was still being held back. Your special person expected some mysterious shortcut to erase old feelings, but instead they were being forced to look at something far more powerful: the truth about themselves. Then the psychic revealed the detail that changed the entire conversation. She told them that sometimes the person who stays in our thoughts isn't there because destiny guarantees a certain ending, but because that connection awakened something we were supposed to notice about ourselves. Your special person went completely still. They remembered the moments when you challenged them to think differently, the times your absence made them recognize what they had taken for granted, and the strange realization that trying to forget you had actually made those lessons clearer. And then came the question that followed them long after they left that room: what if forgetting was never the answer? Something huge is waiting for you, because your special person walked in hoping to remove your memory, but walked out wondering whether they had misunderstood your entire connection from the beginning. And what the psychic refused to reveal until the very end of their conversation was the one thing that could change what happens next: something shifted the moment your special person stepped outside that room. They had entered believing they needed freedom from your memory, yet now one question kept following them. What if the connection they were trying so desperately to forget was actually showing them something they had refused to see? Don't skip, because this is where the story takes an unexpected turn. Before leaving, the psychic had asked them to think about the exact moment everything between you changed. Not the final conversation. Not the distance afterward. The moment before all of that, the moment when something real became impossible to ignore. Your special person remembered it immediately. And suddenly they realized something shocking: they hadn't started pulling away because you meant too little. They had started pulling away because the connection had begun to mean far more than they knew how to understand. That realization followed them home. Every explanation they had repeated to themselves began falling apart, one piece at a time. But there was another detail. something the psychic had noticed without being told. She had looked at your special person and said, "You keep describing this person as someone from your past, yet every sentence you speak sounds unfinished." Silence. Your special person couldn't answer. Because somewhere beneath all their attempts to move forward was an unfinished question about you. What would have happened if they had been more honest? What if they had listened instead of assuming? What if the distance between you had been created by misunderstanding rather than the absence of something meaningful? Stay till the end, because the answer they were searching for was becoming bigger than the original question. They had paid someone hoping to learn how to forget you, but now they were beginning to remember details they had overlooked. The patience you showed, the things you understood without explanation, and the strange way your presence had once made the future feel different. The psychic hadn't promised that you belonged together. Instead, she had revealed something more unsettling to their certainty. They had never truly examined why losing the connection affected them so deeply. And then they remembered the final sentence the psychic had spoken before they left. It was simple, but it changed everything. Before you decide you need to forget someone, make sure you have understood what their presence taught you. Your special person stopped thinking about erasing you and started thinking about what they had learned because of you. That was when another realization surfaced, one they had avoided for far too long. Maybe they weren't missing only the memories. Maybe they were missing the version of themselves that existed when they allowed themselves to be completely genuine around you. Something huge is waiting for you, because this realization leads directly to the secret the psychic noticed almost immediately, the reason your special person could talk about everyone else calmly, yet the moment your name entered the conversation, everything changed. And when she finally explained what she believed that reaction meant, your special person could only sit there in silence. The silence inside that room had not been accidental. The psychic had noticed something your special person had been trying not to admit even to themselves. Every time they spoke about forgetting you, they explained it logically: distance, timing, circumstances, unanswered questions. But whenever they spoke about you, their entire way of speaking changed. There was hesitation. There were details they remembered too clearly. There were moments they claimed no longer mattered, yet somehow they could describe them perfectly. Then the psychic asked one question that completely interrupted their certainty. If this person truly meant nothing anymore, why did you come all this way hoping someone else could help you forget them? Your special person froze. Don't skip, because that question opened a door they had kept closed for a very long time. They suddenly understood that they weren't searching for a way to erase you because you had disappeared from their heart and mind. They were searching because every ordinary attempt to move beyond the connection had left one unanswered feeling behind. And the more they tried to silence it, the louder one question became: what if they had misunderstood what happened between you? Then came the revelation they never expected. The psychic didn't tell them that some invisible force guaranteed you would return. She told them something far more personal: you may not be struggling with this person. You may be struggling with what you never said to them. That sentence landed differently. Your special person immediately remembered conversations that ended too early, words they almost spoke, questions they never asked, and moments when pride or uncertainty made silence easier than honesty. Suddenly, forgetting you seemed impossible for a completely different reason. The story had never received a real ending. Stay till the end, because what happened next surprised even them. Instead of asking the psychic how to forget you, your special person asked, "What if I was wrong?" Those 5 words changed the atmosphere. For the first time, they weren't trying to escape the memory. They were questioning their own version of what happened. What if you weren't asking for perfection? What if you only wanted clarity? What if something they interpreted as distance had actually been disappointment? And what if the connection ended not because nothing was there, but because neither side fully understood what the other was carrying? That was when the psychic gave them one final thought to carry forward. Some connections remain unfinished until you become honest about what they changed inside you. Your special person left with those words repeating in their mind. Later that evening, they found themselves remembering one specific moment with you, a moment they had almost forgotten. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't some enormous declaration. It was something small you once said that suddenly made complete sense now. And for the first time, they realized you may have understood something about them before they understood it themselves. Something huge is waiting for you, because instead of trying to forget that memory, they followed it. One memory led to another. One unanswered question led to another. Until eventually they reached the one truth they had been avoiding from the beginning. Perhaps they didn't need someone to erase you from their thoughts. Perhaps they needed the courage to understand why you were still there. And what they decided to do after realizing that, could change the entire direction of this story. But what happened next was something your special person never imagined when they first walked through that door. Hours later, alone with their thoughts, they stopped asking, "How do I forget you?" and started asking a completely different question: why was I so determined to forget someone I never truly understood? That question changed everything. Don't skip, because this was the turning point. They began replaying the connection without the old assumptions, without trying to prove who was right or wrong. And suddenly, tiny moments looked completely different. A conversation they once dismissed now seemed meaningful. A silence they once misunderstood now carried another possibility. Even the distance between you began to look less like an ending and more like a chapter neither of you had properly explained. Your special person finally understood why the psychic had refused to give them the simple answer they wanted. She could not erase a question they had never honestly faced. And now that question had become impossible to ignore. Then something surprising happened. Your special person reached for their phone. For a moment, they considered searching for your name, but stopped. Not because they no longer cared, but because they suddenly understood that acting from emotion without clarity could repeat the same old pattern. The psychic's words returned, "Understand what the connection changed inside you first." So they sat there and began separating memory from assumption. What did they actually know? What had they merely guessed? Which moments were real, and which conclusions had been created by fear of uncertainty? Stay till the end, because this is where their biggest realization arrived. They discovered that many of the reasons they had used to convince themselves to forget you weren't really about you at all. They were about timing, confusion, expectations, things left unsaid. And suddenly your special person saw something they had never seen before. Forgetting you would never answer those questions. Only honesty could do that. And just when they thought they had finally understood the psychic's message, one last detail returned to them. Before the session ended, she had said, "The most important question isn't whether this person returns. It's who you become after finally understanding what happened." Your special person had barely noticed those words earlier. Now they felt enormous. Something huge is waiting for you, because that sentence gave them a completely different idea. Maybe their next move wasn't supposed to be dramatic. Maybe it wasn't about chasing the past or forcing an outcome. Maybe it was simply about becoming honest enough to stop pretending the connection meant nothing. And somewhere inside that realization, a decision began forming. A quiet decision. One they had not planned when the day began. Your special person had paid a psychic hoping to forget you, but now they were considering something completely opposite, facing the unfinished truth they had spent so long avoiding. And before the night was over, they made one choice that even they never expected to make, and then came the moment that changed the meaning of everything. Your special person opened an old conversation, not to live in the past, but to finally read it without the assumptions they had carried for so long. One message stopped them completely. It was ordinary on the surface, almost easy to overlook, yet now they understood what they had missed. You had never been asking them to become someone else. You had been asking for clarity, consistency, and the courage to say what was real. Suddenly, the psychic's words connected like pieces of a puzzle. Don't skip, because this was the revelation that left your special person staring at the screen in silence. Perhaps they had spent all this time trying to forget you because remembering you also meant remembering the moment they could have chosen honesty, but didn't. And now, for the first time, they could see that clearly. They put the phone down and walked away for a moment, but the realization followed them. What if the unfinished feeling wasn't asking them to recreate the past? What if it was asking them to finally understand it? Stay till the end, because your special person began seeing the connection from an entirely different perspective. They remembered your patience differently. They remembered your distance differently. They even remembered their own choices differently. The psychic had never promised a magical reunion or guaranteed what would happen next. Instead, she had pointed toward something more powerful: truth. Your special person could finally admit that you mattered. They could admit that the connection changed them. And most importantly, they could admit that pretending otherwise had never created the peace they expected. That was why every attempt to forget had eventually brought their thoughts back to the same unanswered place. But then came the choice nobody could make for them. Would they leave everything exactly where it was, carrying this new understanding quietly into the future? Or would they eventually find a respectful way to acknowledge what had remained unsaid? Something huge is waiting for you, because their answer surprised even them. They decided not to rush. No dramatic promises. No forced ending. They wanted their next decision to come from clarity rather than confusion. Yet one truth had already become impossible to reverse: they no longer wanted to erase you from their story. They wanted to understand why meeting you had changed it. And as they closed their phone that night, the question was no longer, "How can I forget?" It had become, "If I finally understand what this connection meant, what should I do with that truth?" The answer was beginning to form, and it could become the most unexpected chapter. Yet.by the next morning, your special person understood that something inside them had permanently shifted. The strange part was that nothing outside had changed yet. There had been no dramatic encounter, no sudden message, no perfect sign telling them exactly what to do. But internally, the battle to forget you had ended. Don't skip, because this is where the psychic's strangest observation finally made sense. She had told them, "You keep treating this connection like a problem that needs to disappear," when perhaps it was an experience that needed to be understood. Now those words felt completely different. Your special person realized they had been fighting the memory instead of learning from it. They remembered how meeting you challenged certain beliefs they carried about trust, communication, timing, and vulnerability. They remembered how your presence had revealed parts of themselves they normally kept hidden. And suddenly they understood something they never expected to discover when they paid that psychic. Forgetting you was never going to give them the clarity they were actually searching for. Then another realization surfaced, and this one was even bigger. Your special person began wondering whether they had confused moving forward with pretending nothing mattered. Those are not the same thing. Moving forward can mean accepting what happened, becoming wiser because of it, and choosing differently when life gives you another meaningful moment. Stay till the end, because this thought completely changed the question surrounding you. They no longer needed certainty about what you were thinking. They didn't need to invent signs or predict the future. They needed to become honest about their own side of the story. And once they did, they recognized something surprising. The strongest part of this connection wasn't some mysterious prediction. It was the transformation it had already created. They were thinking more carefully, listening more deeply, questioning assumptions they once accepted immediately. Your absence had forced them to notice what your presence had once been trying to teach them. And that is when the final truth became impossible to ignore. Your special person had entered that psychic's room asking for an ending, but they walked away with awareness. Something huge is waiting for you, not necessarily because the future has already been written, but because neither of you has seen every page yet. Maybe one day there will be another conversation. Maybe clarity will arrive separately. Maybe your paths will cross again under completely different circumstances. No one can promise which possibility becomes real. But one thing had changed beyond doubt. Your special person could no longer tell themselves that you meant nothing. The psychic had not erased your memory. She had made them confront why it remained meaningful. And somewhere between the questions, the silence, and everything they finally understood, your special person discovered the revelation that left them speechless. Sometimes the person you are desperate to forget becomes unforgettable because meeting them changed the way you understand yourself. And now the next chapter depends not on prediction, but on what they choose to do with that truth.